I date online. I went to a girl's house for the first meeting. I felt this was a strange request on her part. It turns out she was awaiting trial and was under house arrest for killing her husband. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. People of Reddit, what are your worst dating stories? I met a guy who said he wanted to make me dinner. 19-year-old me thought this was a sweet idea. When we got to his house I had to pee. I used his bathroom and when I came out he was naked on the couch and said, "Dinner's served." I told him I wasn't hungry anymore and left. The naked man works 2 out of 3 times. This was not the time. Went to a restaurant with a guy I met online. He seemed like a really good guy and we actually hit it off really well. We were sharing a dessert and having a nice time until his fiancée came over and dumped a drink all over him. She started screaming about how she loved him and how she couldn't believe he'd gone behind her back. She was out to dinner with her mother at the same restaurant. Apparently their plans had changed and he had no clue she would even be in town. He left me at the table, running out after her and her mother, who was screaming profanities at me from across the restaurant. I was nearly in tears trying to explain to the waiter, and really anyone who would listen, they had made quite a scene, that I had no idea that he was engaged, and then, because he had left, I got stuck with the bill. Twist, after the whole incident, he tried to go out with me again. He claimed they had broken up. I managed to find him on Facebook and learned that they were still together, so I sent her a message with a screenshot of the text where he had asked me out again. I told her I was really sorry that she was dating such a scumbag, and that she could do better. So she and I ended up talking, and now we've actually become casual friends and go out to lunch on occasion. And he's still a scumbag with an active OkCupid. Fantastic ending. Good on you. Mend and befriend. No offense, but isn't the first online dating rule to meet in a public place such as a restaurant or coffee shop? But anyways, that's terrifying. In my defense, there was a lot of suggestive texting. She lured me in. My wiener took control. Took my girlfriend out for a nice lunch, assured her she didn't need to bring her purse. Both my cards got rejected. She had to walk all the way back to her house, get her purse, come back and pay for the lunch while I sat there and felt like dying. This happened to my girlfriend. She picked me up mid-jog and we grabbed food. I had to run back to her car, which was very far away, then drive to her place and get some cash and come back. This waiter was flirting with her when I returned. Boy was he let down. I went out with this guy and we ordered the exact same drink. He somehow got S-faced while I remained sober. I guess he didn't drink that much. Anyways, he started acting completely obnoxious, being way too affectionate towards me, trying to kiss me on the cheek and putting his hand on my thigh. I got up to go to the bathroom and he said, "Wait, I have to tell you a secret first." He leaned in like he was going to whisper something to me, and then, he licked my ear. I left. He followed me to the train and kept begging for a goodnight kiss. He still comes into my work all the time, and when my boss sees him walk in, she actually lets me leave and go to the McDonald's next door until he leaves. One time I had a guy call me into the bathroom and try to force me watch him take a pee. Freaking weird. I had a girl who wanted to hold me while I pee. A girl I took a class with told me about a beat up with a guy she met online. She invited him to her workplace so that they'd meet in a public area with other people around. He texted her from the parking lot and asked if she had any napkins or tissues that she could bring to him. But apparently he felt the need to take care of business prior to seeing her but had no way of cleaning himself up. She brought him some napkins and told him she never wants to see him around again. Gotta clean the pipes before a big date. Everyone knows that. Met a guy online, a little older than I would have liked, but I didn't think anything of it. I figured, hey, it's just coffee. If anything goes badly I always have a bail. I get there, and the dude is a Guido, an older Guido. Fake tan that makes him look like a leather wrapped mummy, balding, bling, shirt open to show off chest hair, the works. Alright, I think it would be rude to stand him up. It's just coffee, and then I can bail. Guy has a child he's never mentioned, keeps insisting on buying me more coffee drinks, watched those like a hawk, but he never slipped anything into them. Goes on about how he's retired, he said he was employed full time, and how he wants 10 more children. WTF. I start hedging out of there. claiming I need to go meet a friend somewhere to help them with something. At this point I was about to claim my cat was on fire to escape, when he grabs my arm and tries to convince me to go home with him. I dropped his arm on the table fairly hard, apologized when he let go in pain, and then dashed. That was the creepiest butthole I ever met. Thankfully I gave him a Google number, not my real number, so I just disabled that number and never heard from him again. I don't know why more people don't use Google numbers. Those things are freaking gold. So I met this guy at a party for a friend of a friend. I'm pretty shy, so I ended up kind of hanging out in a corner by myself and met a guy who was also a friend of the host. He was pretty cute and funny, so we spent most of the night talking and the subsequent few days texting and calling each other on and off. Finally, he invited me out on a date to go horseback riding. Cool. I love horses. I'm down. We live in a bigger city, so we have to drive for about 1.5 hours to get to the place where he boards his horses. On the way there we chat and generally bulls until we're about 15 minutes away, then he gets really quiet. I take this as him getting tired of driving and just enjoy the music and scenery. We get to the place and he literally hops out of the truck before he even puts it in park and runs towards the stable calling his horse's name. I put the car in park thinking that it's been forever since he's seen her and he really loves his horse. I follow him to where he goes and he's in the stable feeding her carrots and lovingly stroking her nose. He gives me a carrot and shows me how to hold my hand to feed her and instructs me to give her a carrot. The horse eyeballs me, turns her head and walks away. Whatever. Horse. He loans me a horse to ride and we go on a mini ride and picnic. Anytime he got close enough to touch me or hold my hand, his horse would mysteriously veer away from me. After we're done we pile into the truck and make the drive home. About 1.5 miles from my exit, he asked me what I thought of his horse. I said she was cool and I thought she was beautiful. Then he dropped a bomb on me. He said he was fricking his horse, and that they were in love. The only reason he was dating was because he knew he was going to die before her. He told me that if we were to date that I was not to make him choose because he would always choose her first and that she was his priority. In other words, I would be second fiddle to a horse. I've had some pretty awful dates, but if I ever top that one I'm joining a convent. Whatever. Horse. That made the entire thread for me. Thank you. A year after the loss of my last hit by a drunk driver, I decided it was time for me to try to start dating again. I met a girl on a Cupid and from our long conversations over instant messenger, I felt that we had clicked well enough to meet in person. Like many others here that have done online dating, my partner only had a couple of images on her profile that were angled so you really couldn't figure out her body type. Since I was a broke college student, we were just going to go window shopping at the mall. I'm sitting outside Hot Topic and these two very large women approach me. The larger of the two kind of looks like the girl I was supposed to be on a date with. It turns out the pics online were from 2 years ago and she became much bigger than imagined. She had brought her friend along as backup. I figured her friend would go do other things while we hung around. Nope. She would follow us all evening, staying within a 10-foot radius. Now, this friend would not shut up about how much she loved Twilight and how she was on team something or other. I didn't give a crap, and I just wanted to talk with this girl I thought I'd hit it off with. Eventually, we were outside and they were smoking. I have weak lungs, and I told her this before we met in person, so I was making sure the wind was blowing away from me. Her friend says that because I don't smoke, I wasn't cool and that the girl should just cut her losses. As we're going back inside, I pulled the girl to the side and asked her why her friend came along. Her response was, "Oh, she's the high priestess of my vampire coven and she wanted to see if you would make a good recruit." I turned and walked away. TLDR. Have a date who brings a high priestess vampire friend to convert me and join her coven. I'm actually female, and I did eventually find a wonderful girlfriend who isn't a vampire witch creature thing. Our meeting story was not quite as crazy as this one. This story had freaking everything. Lesbians, vampires, and Hot Topic. Great read. 10/10. Yeah, we went out to a nice restaurant that she liked. Second date, we had a nice dinner and everything was good. Check came. I paid with my debit card. It was declined. Apparently, there was an issue with my direct deposit and a fair amount of money didn't get into my bank which I'd no noticed. Okay. Here's my credit card that I carry just in case. Where's my credit card? I had just went on a trip and cleaned out my wallet. Credit card sitting on desk at home. Checkbook? That's at home too. Cash? Who the heck carries cash? After sheepishly explaining the situation and promising to pay her back ASAP, she paid, walked out to the car and found no car. After calling around, discovered the car was towed. Towing company was overly aggressive and towed my car when they shouldn't have. Took a cab to the towing yard. No money, she had to pay for cab. Got into argument with ignorant tow truck guys who refused to release my car even though it was parked properly and we had restaurant receipts to prove it, etc. $125. She had to pay. Worst date ever for me. Interesting post-date tidbits. She was a trooper and we're married now. Lol. I always now carry 3 ways to pay. That just isn't happening again. We ended up buying a house in the town where the tow truck company is. The tow truck company mysteriously burned down one night. I had nothing to do with that, but I could definitely see someone torching that place, though my theory is they burned it down for insurance money. A few more post-date tidbits I forgot. Cab drove us right by the house we ended up buying when we moved into that town, though we didn't know it at the time. A couple weeks after my car got towed, the mall building got rid of the towing company and opened the whole thing up due to all of the forced towings happening. I don't know how to tell you this, but your wife is an arsonist. I was having coffee with a guy when he leaned in, looked me in the eyes and nearly whispered, "I thought about you when I masturbated yesterday." True story. My first date with a girl, we were out having some drinks. She was maybe a bit tipsy, and she leaned over to say she wanted me. I told her to maybe wait till she was sober to say such a thing. She said she fingered herself to the thought of me last night, and she was sober then. Of course, it was way less creepy coming from her, though. I once had a guy rub precum on me, stuck his hand down his pants and rubbed the stickiness on my arm. I was like, WTF. He said he was marking his territory. I did not see him again, although he was a master manipulator and made me feel like I was in the wrong. You dated a spastic. Worst date I ever had was actually like my first date ever. It was super awkward asking her out, but I told her I'd never asked a girl out before. We made the plans together and we were meeting up for lunch at a burger place. I pay for the meal. We sit down and I begin to eat my food. She barely eats anything, telling me she ate beforehand. You know, because when you're meeting someone for lunch you don't want to sit there eating with them. She then talks about her job at Starbucks and how she spits in drinks and gives rude people who ask for decaf regular caffeinated coffee. Other gross things like picking her nose and putting it in the food and just black. I was not laughing or in any way acting interested in this topic. She also decides to remind me, we will not be freaking. This is my first date with a girl ever. I told her this. She knows this. Yet, she felt the need to say this, as if somehow I was giving her the signals that I needed to do her right then and there at this burger place. She checks her phone multiple times, texts people and seems to be having a more interesting conversation with someone else. She goes on about how ugly and fat she is, which she wasn't. I know some women do tend to have self-esteem issues. I now know though, she did this in excess for a date. I tried to tell her different, but I think she honestly lost respect for me because I found her attractive. She talks about how badly she wants to date some celebrity, IDK who, we'll say Michael Cera for the heck of it. How cute is, how she wants to marry him. I'm just basically feeling like, I'm not in any way talking to a real person. Like, this seemed like the plot of a Kate Hudson movie or something. I was pretty well convinced this was not going to work. So, the date ends, and it actually was pretty short. I think it was only an hour or so, but it felt like so much longer. After that, she was still texting me and trying to go out with me, but I just couldn't. This date only feels worse and worse each time I think of it. As being my first date, I didn't think how bad it was till I went on more. Then I realized what a horrible date she was being. Thanks for making me never drink at Starbucks again. A classmate set me up with her sister. I saw a picture. She was a really hot blonde girl. We decided to meet for coffee. She showed up in full skinhead girl regalia and I figured she was a traditional or rude girl kind of skinhead girl. 10 minutes into our conversation she told me, I'm really glad you're white. From your picture I thought you might be part beaner or something. I put down $2 for my coffee, said frick you, and left. Her sister, my classmate, went out of her way to avoid me the following week, but then later apologized. She said she had no idea that her sister was that fricked up. She knew. Didn't happen to me, but a friend. This is too good of an opportunity to pass up though. So this girlfriend of mine goes on a date with this guy we met in high school at a state cross-country meet. She figures everything will be alright, because she's known him for a few years. They go out to dinner, and go back to her place to watch a movie, cause they're broke college seniors. Anyways, while they're watching TV, this guy just looks over at her and says, "Hey, do you mind if I jack off?" At this point, they haven't even kissed or anything, not even held hands, just awkward source first date space between them. Of course, she says no, you can't, and laughs because she doesn't think this guy is serious. Turns out, he was. He just whips it out and starts masturbating right in front of her, moaning and the whole shebang. She laughs because she's so very nervous. To make it worse, it goes everywhere when he's done, including her hair. She stood up, looked at him, and said, "Can you please leave now?" and opened the door for him before running to take a shower. Apparently, he thought this was cool and said something along the lines of, "I'll catch ya later." Worst first date ever. I had a blind date with a woman and everything went amazingly well. We were on the same wavelength on everything and had one of the greatest nights of my life. A couple of days later, we went out on a second date. As dinner ended, she looked at me and said that she was having a great time and really liked me. In fact, she said that she liked me enough to know that I was the one and that she wanted to know how serious I was about our relationship. I was sort of stunned, then looked at her and reminded her that we were on our second date. She said that our ages, we were both mid-30s at the time, we knew enough to know what we were getting into. She wanted to have a family and have kids, and she did not want to wait. She said that I was the one she wanted to have her kids with. I sat there dumbstruck. When I didn't answer immediately, she pushed again. I just said that we should take it slowly and see what happened. She erupted, saying that she didn't have time for that and needed to move quickly. When I was still too dumbstruck to speak, she started flipping out in the restaurant. She stormed out, screaming at me. I got a call from the woman that set us up asking what happened and why the woman was heartbroken. I tried to explain, but I am not sure she really believed me, or at least not enough to try to set me up with anyone else. Baby crazies. I dated a girl from OKC. She was a CNA, certified nursing assistant, that did home health care for terminal cancer end-of-life management as well as people with ALS. So she would go to people's houses and help them eat, bath, pay bills and so on. Or with those dying she would help make them more comfortable and literally be there sometimes when they passed. After dating her for way too long I found out that she was stealing from her clients. She was stealing from dying people. Literally watching people die knowing that she had taken what was theirs as well as helping them pay bills and trying to comfort them in their financial distress as she stole from them from the other room that they were incapable of going to. I asked her why she would do this. I gave her money all the time and she lived with her dad and only had a phone payment. She said she wanted to be a strong person, and I guess preying on the dead and dying somehow made her feel strong. Dropped it like it was hot and reported what I knew to her employer. They did nothing and the police weren't interested in an ex-boyfriend's words. Last I heard she's still a can, though now she looks like she hit the M. So many other terrible OKC stories. Don't know why I'm still on there. TLDR. She was stealing from dying people. Until the end of this story I thought OKC stood for Oklahoma City. Now I realize that it's OkCupid. TLDR. I'm a dumb. My friend set me up on a blind date with this woman. She ended up being cute and fun. We were having a blast. 2 bars, a few pictures, and a bunch of shots later she told me she loved me. It should have been a warning sign but we started hooking up and I let it go. We get into her truck and she asks me where we are going. I suggested her place since I lived at home with my parents at the time. She went ballistic. She said her stepbrother was looking for us and was going to kill us. She slams the truck into reverse and then starts speeding around town. She stops the truck, says she is sorry, and we start hooking up again. Then she goes crazy and slams on the gas and starts to scream, whip it out, F show me what you got, F, while punching the dash. And this goes on for about 20 minutes until she stops again and starts begging for forgiveness. I took the chance to jump out of the truck and run away. I called my friend who set us up and made him pick me up at 3 in the morning. I do not condone drunk driving. It happened, it was part of the story. I did not steal from Louis. I have probably posted this before if the internet detectives want to check on my credibility. Dear sweet butter Jesus, I'm glad you're still with us. I was young and dumb and bored. I had been talking to a guy online for a while and he mentioned he was doing homework. I offered to come over and help. I go over. Things are going okay. We are doing homework and talking. I wasn't attracted to him off the bat. Very large guy. But I'm okay with that because personality changes things. I'm curious where things will go. He starts turning things more physical after about 30 minutes. I try to slow down things. He starts talking more about freaking. I say that I need to go because I have things to do. He says okay, but can I wait a few minutes and do I want something to drink? I say no thank you. He goes to get something and I notice he locks the door as he passes by. I stand up and grab my bag. He comes out of the kitchen and says, here, drink this. I pretend to take a sip and walk around the other side of the couch. At this point I realize he is purposely blocking the path to the door. He starts asking if he can go down on me. I realized I'm in a craptastic situation. I put my bag down on the couch and go into the kitchen. All the while he's saying stuff he wants to do to me. As he is going around a side table I run over and grab my bag, run for the door, unlock it and get in my car. When he sees I'm getting away and faster than him he starts screaming, I'll let you sit on my face. I'll let you sit on my face. I'm glad I got away. Sadly there has been no face sitting ever for me after that incident. About a year later I saw my 15-year-old sister chatting with someone with a very similar screen name. I tell her a bit of the story to warn her off and then made a face screen name to chat her up, AOL style, and freak her out with how much info she gave me. So hopefully I helped her not make the same mistakes I did. This is before I knew what a dating site was, but random girls would message me from my area on ICQ back in the day. I was probably 17 or 18. I met a girl on there and she was a very kinky girl, the kind you don't take home to mother, a super freak if you will. Now, I had retinoblastoma as a child and lost my left eye. I have a prosthetic but nobody at my school really made a big deal about it, at least to my face, and I was treated like any other kid. I was naive to the fact that this could be seen as undesirable to a female, so we talked quite a bit on there and she proposed we go for a drive. I assume so she could see if I looked attractive enough to hook up with later. It went okay, but because I was driving, she never really saw the left side of my face. Next time she proposed I pick her up and we go to my parents' house and watch a movie. So I pick her up and take her down to my room. I walk in and she stops behind me in the doorway. So I turn around and look at her. She's looking at me weird and says, your eye isn't the same color. I said, yay, I lost an eye as a kid so one of them is fake. I don't know why I blurted that out. I usually just say no, they aren't. She thought I was joking and made fun of me. I forget what she said but I wasn't offended, I actually laughed. Then she said, oh my god, you're serious? I'm so sorry. She wouldn't look me in the eyes and said she was so embarrassed that I had to take her home right away. So I dropped her off and never heard from her again. I feel terrible for thinking this, but when I read retinoblastoma all I could think of was eye beams. Guy showed up high on M, listed everything he wanted in a relationship, got P when I didn't respond to his 30 pre-date texts, assumed I was ignoring him if I didn't reply back within a certain time frame, invited me to Vegas with his dad. Yeah, worst first date ever. I can't believe you dated my brother. I met a female on Plenty of Fish and we dated for a year. I broke up with her when she posted some personal things on FB. She later broke into my house, and among other things, put what I believe was a caustic cleaning product into a bottle of vodka and a bottle of personal lubricant. Oh, and she trashed my laptop. She lied and told the cops that she lived there and was trying to get her things. I've never had a bad breakup but I've had pain in the butt roommates. Excuse me while I litmus paper all of the things. One time I met a girl online, And for our first date we went bowling after a cheap dinner. Well, as we're bowling, my dinner began to not sit well with me, and I had to run to the bathroom. Before I can get my vivacious first date's jeans off, I proceed to poop myself a little bit. I was able to make a save for most of it, but I certainly pooped on my pants and leg. I was able to make a hasty cleanup operation in that bowling alley bathroom, enough so that I could proceed with the date without too much suspicion. I didn't tell her this until more than a year after this date. 3 months ago, we got married. I wish I could say this was the only time that I've pooped myself in her presence throughout our courtship. I once ran with a woman that spent from 7 to 18 in a state home for girls. His father violated her at 7. She cut his throat with a carving knife. We didn't have problems, but I was real careful to make sure she was in favor when we moved to freaking. Sadly, my boyfriend tells our first date story in this category. I have a lot of social anxiety issues, especially around touching, mostly due to lack thereof. We'd both expressed interest in each other, but I wasn't sure it was worth the emotional effort. But then we were the only ones of our friends who showed up to a rock concert. Later I walked him home thinking, you know, this is nice, I'm kind of into this, and then he tries to kiss me and I literally just panic and go stiff as a board and say eep. He backs off and is like okay, never mind, and I just blurt out maybe try this again when I am drunk, or face palms all round. But hey, it's been 2.5 years and going strong, so you never know. Under house arrest, I have to wonder what exactly was her plan in case you had wanted to go out. A coworker set me up with her neighbor to help him get back into the swing of things following his divorce. When I met him at the restaurant, he was dressed kinda freaky with tall black boots, a pink button down with the collar standing up, and large hoop earrings. I called my coworker as soon as I finished dinner and she said that he didn't sound like her neighbor. Unfortunately it was. He was having some sort of psychotic breakdown and ended up killing himself a short time later. That escalated rather quickly. I attended freshman year at UNO. Had a relatively normal year, except most girls I encountered seemed to actively avoid me. I finally asked a classmate if it was all in my head. He said I look a lot like some guy that creeped on a lot of girls. He told me some rumors about what the guy did. Blah blah blah. Next year I transferred to another school. First week of classes, nearly everyone on this campus gives me a doe in headlights look. I find out the creeper attended this school too and had a much worse reputation here. How do I find out? Campus security kept on getting calls about me roaming the campus again. TLDR. Uncanny resemblance to a known psycho creeper equals girls ran away from me equals 0 dates in college so far. Got in a hit and run accident on the Bay Bridge. I was the hit, not the run. Funny thing about performing a hit and run, it's hard to do in stop and go traffic. So yeah, as I chased, I use that word lightly, the guy down. My date got the license plate. 4.5 years later, still together. Clearly we made a good crime fighting team. At first when you said you didn't get out of there fast enough I thought you meant she killed you facepalm. Ghost of Ops past. Took a girl out to a nice expensive dinner and we had a great time. I felt a real connection. After dinner was over, in which she only had 1 glass of wine, I asked her what she wanted to do since it was still early. She said let's go to a bar. I know of a good place. I followed her lead and drove us to a bar out of town. Immediately she orders 2 jajabums and a Jack and Coke. She downs the 2 jajabums one after another and in the time it took me to let the head settle on my Guinness she had finished the Jack and Coke. This continued for the 2 or so hours we were there. In the car ride back to her place she broke down and admitted she had a drinking problem and needed to go to rehab. Having friends in AA and etc. I offered to put her in touch with them so she could go to meetings. I even offered to take her to from them but not sit in on the meetings. She outright refused and said I need rehab and got angry. Pulled up at her house and she almost jumped into my lap trying to get me to come inside saying my parents are asleep so we'll have to be quiet. Calmly told her no and that I would text her the next day. She gets out of the car sulking and walks inside. Bullet. Dodged. That isn't even bad. That's just drunk. Till if you forget your wallet then poop yourself in public, you will end up marrying your date. I'd met a girl online and we'd talked quite a bit via chat and telephone and things seemed to be going great. We had a lot in common. Our senses of humor were pretty similar. She seemed really nice. I was pumped. We met at a Caladi Bros coffee shop and when I walked over to her table and introduced myself she looked me up and down and said haha. No one walked out shaking her head. That was not my favorite day. One time a girl came to my place after a date. She went to the bathroom and spent a good amount of time in there. Then I heard 3 flushes. She left in a huge hurry leaving me with the overflowing toilet after her giant dump. So awkward. I bet somewhere in this thread we'll find I went to this guy's house for a date after some terrible chili. I ended up rushing out of there leaving behind the crap of a century. My worst story is that no one replies to my messages, no matter how much time and effort I put into my message. You should probably work on your profile more. Honestly, as a girl, I only partly cared about the initial conversation. I was more interested in the profile and pictures. It's sad, but you really have to sell yourself online. Met a girl on OkCupid. We decided to grab a burger in her area. We met, chatted, ate, had a great time, found out we shared many interests, had a good laugh, very friendly and casual. She then got really disheartened, started being very quiet. I asked what was wrong. She admitted she was a transgender. Honestly, you couldn't tell, male to female, and had no idea how to get into the dating world now that she was the gender she'd always felt she was. I told her that I simply wasn't attracted to transgenders. We spent about 20 minutes apologizing to each other and went our separate ways. It's about 2 months later now. She has a boyfriend who she was completely honest with from the get-go, and we frequently hang out, play video games and watch cartoons. Yeah, that's my worst date, or most unusual date. I don't date much. I'm sorry, Reddit. Sounded like you both acted in a normal and calm manner without deception. This thread is for the weirdos. Get out of here. Went out with this guy for the 3rd time. We decided to go to a bar and I ended up driving because he was already drinking. Found out when we got there that he was messed up. Like he was high on something and the drink he was drinking was super strong. So we get there and order some drinks. He has to go to the restroom. He is gone for 10 minutes. He comes back accompanied by some security guards because he is too drunk high to even stand. He is kicked out and it is only 9 PM. I have to help him to my car, which is not fun wearing heels when he is a big dude. Drive back to his car where I wait an hour plus for him to sober up. He then stumbles out of my car apologizing and I drive away. Then, I still saw him because he was a security guard at a bank next to my work. I was friendly because, hey, everyone makes a mistake, until I find out he is a pimp. Like a full-on pimp who is on probation and using this job as a cover-up. He wanted me to come meet his girls who stayed at his house. Knew you. But you're thug B. You'd fit right in. We went out to dinner. Didn't feel much of anything there. He seemed nice enough but I just wasn't interested. He drove me to my apartment and I said thank you for dinner, even though I paid for mine. Good night basically, and he said no, let's watch TV. I said okay even though I didn't want him coming in. I don't like to make people feel bad. Long story short, he ended up trying to frick me. When I told him no, I don't know you, not happening repeatedly, he continued to grab me and try to convince me. Frustrated, he took his dong out and started jacking off. Kept grabbing my hands trying to get me to do it. Kept touching me and trying to take my pants off. This only lasted about a minute or 2 before he came saying my name. I was so disgusted. I didn't go off on him because he was a 40-year-old 6-foot bodybuilder that could easily take me, a 22-year-old, 5'10" girl. I live alone and I just wanted him to leave, so I was nice. He thought things went well and texted me for weeks after with no response from me. I cancelled my account the next day. Yeah, I'm almost positive that's illegal. Also disgusting and terrifying. I probably would have cried. We went out to the club. She got blackout drunk and I had to carry her to my car and drive her back to her house while she vomited all over my car. The next morning she told all her friends I violated her, and now there's a good portion of girls in my hometown that think I'm a date debaucher. Fun times. I dated a girl who lived next door to her cousin. Well, that's what she said, at least. Eventually I found out that they were actually roommates. No big deal, right? Fricked if I care what a living situation is. Go ahead and live with your cousin all you like. What did bother me was when I found out what she meant by cousin. See, she didn't mean the son of one of my parents' siblings, so much as some guy I'm not actually related to. Also, he thinks he's going to marry me someday. That was a little difficult to accept, so much so that I didn't even want to make the obvious incest joke. She was from a southern state. It's a freaking habit. Okay, so, I'm not a cheater, and I don't want to assist cheating. Unfortunately, damage is already done. He knows about me, and is absolutely not okay with it. He's also got some serious emotional issues. She's a freaking ice queen, and thinks he's overreacting. I feel bad for the guy. He was apparently a pretty nice guy, and he didn't deserve that crap. He locks himself in their bathroom, smashes a window, and starts hacking away at himself. I spend maybe 3-4 hours talking him out of suicide over the phone. That would probably be the most awkward freaking conversation of my life, and I have to think it was probably even worse for him. I mean, I was kinda the guy that had been doing horrible things to his fiancée and now knew precisely how unsatisfied she was with him in graphic detail. Fun side note, the almost exact same freaking situation happened again maybe 2-3 years later with a different couple. There's a really good reason I avoid relationships now. Write a book now. ATTN. Men be careful. I've talked to girls online that seemed a little too friendly for just meeting me online. Made a female account and talked to her. Found out that she lures men into coming over to her place, then her boyfriend robs them at gunpoint. This was years ago but always stuck with me. I was talking with this guy from POF, and we decided to go out on a date. I ignored the big warning sign that he never wanted to give me his phone number and always called me from a blocked number. I had to go pick him up, which isn't a big deal, but I had no clue where I was going and subsequently got lost. He directs me to this park and doesn't want to get out of the car to walk around but just frick me. I refuse. Then I wanted to eat, and since he was still with me, I brought him along. We get food and then he told me he has no money and I have to pay for him. Then I try to bring him home, and he gets me completely lost and frustrated as frickin' Patterson, NJ, which I'm about 90% positive he did on purpose, and then he stole my DS Lite. He continued to call me for months afterwards, and I would not pick up at all. I knew it was him because he would always call from a blocked number. I was 16 at the time and a girl from school had her friends tell me she liked me, so I made plans to go to the movies with her that weekend. My sister and her boyfriend were going to the movies as well, and he had a truck and offered us to squeeze in and give us a ride. He takes me to her house and her father answers the door. He is a dickwad off the bat and is asking me a bunch of questions. We go outside and get in the truck and he comes running out screaming saying, "No way. There's no way you're riding in there." It was really awkward and my sister said, "Well, we will go home and get my dad's car and then we will go." He said okay, and we went back to my house and my dad offered us a ride. We get there and are standing in line for the movies, and then I hear someone yelling her name. We turn around and it's her dad gesturing for her to go to him. She goes over there and he is telling her that he followed us and knows we didn't go back and get the other car, and even after explaining for 15 minutes that my dad ended up giving us a ride, he stood there and watched us buy the tickets and walk inside before he left. I never asked her out again. TLDR, psycho dad followed me and ate a movie. Poor girl, that would be mortifying. I was in this one relationship where every time Tony, XGF, and I would go out to dinner, her crazy friend Michelle would somehow end up around the same area as us. She would always invite herself along and would always leave her money at home. She said she would pay me back, but I've never seen any repayment. I would always get stuck paying for everyone because Michelle and Tony were both broke. Sometimes, Michelle would even bring her sister along. Needless to say, I'm sure I've lost over $1,000 to Michelle's gut. The names have not been changed to protect the innocent, because I don't care about them. I met a guy through a friend of a friend. We will call him Richard, because he is one sick dong. After a couple days of texting, I felt comfortable enough to go to his place to watch a video. Little did I know he lived in the middle of nowhere. It was about an hour and a half through the bush to get to his cabin. On our way I saw a cute young coyote running alongside the road. I specifically remember saying AWW when I saw it. I am an avid animal lover and nature enthusiast. Richard then proceeds to grin and speed to catch up to the coyote. I rummage through my purse for my phone to take a picture. Just as I find my phone, he swerves towards the pup. Sure enough, I felt an immediate bump as he drove over the coyote. He then smirks and puts the truck in reverse and runs over the animal again. I was silent and heartbroken. We get to his place and I still haven't broken my silence. He offers me a much needed drink and I accept. We awkwardly had a few drinks together and watched a video. I suggest it was time for me to head home as I am still feeling devastated. He then tells me he has a drinking and driving infraction and he hadn't planned on returning to town. I would have slept on his couch had he had one. The cabin was bare except for his bed. If his place been closer to town, I would have walked. This wasn't the case, so I joined him in bed with my clothes on. He starts to cuddle me and I tell him I am not interested. I would just like to go home. He doesn't put a lot of effort in as I am stern and very cold towards him. I start to feel the bed shake and hear the blankets rustle. Richard is actually fapping next to me. He starts to rub it up against me when I ask him what he is doing. Richard then asks if can just CM on me. That is all he wants. Obviously I am not into it and respond in disgust. He then proceeds to ask me in a frustrated tone if I will at least pass him a sock. I still shudder every time I think about that day. Now I am skeptical to visit a guy's place without getting to know him first. Yeah, killing an animal intentionally on a first date's probably the worst one yet in my book. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video.